Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, selamat sore. My name is Muhammad Adam from Faculty of Letters, Balikpapan University. I'm going to present my paper entitled Deliberate Use of Islamic Religious Terms, Metaphor in Indonesian Political Discourse and the Potential Semantic Derogation. There will be 4 main sections of my presentation. The first one is introduction with background, literary review, and objectives. The second one is a method. The third one, results. And the last one will be conclusion. A little introduction on why I actually study the aspect of the Islamic religious terms metaphor in political discourse is there are many use in terms of speaking about political discourse by using Islamic religious terms. One of the example here that I can put is the statement of the ex-chairman of PPP party, one of the Islamic party on 2013, saying that as if we are in congregational prayer, Pak SBY as the imam or the leader, and we as the makmum or followers. And in this context, the description of political coalition is described as a congregational prayer or salat berjamaah. Now, the theory that I use to meet the purpose of the study is the conceptual metaphor theory that agree that metaphor is understood as an experimental base mapping between a concrete source domain and an abstract target domain. This was proposed by Lakoff and Johnson back in 1980. Godley further added that metaphor as thinking about one thing as if it is another thing. So it's not just a matter of linguistics surface, but it is on the conceptual or a thinking domain. In this context, the focus of the study is the description of political coalition as congregational prayer or salat berjamaah. In particular to political rhetoric, Chilton asserted that metaphor has long been recognized as important in political rhetoric. It is also agreed by Charles Black, who highlights the persuasive function of metaphor in political discourse. Followed by conceptual metaphor theory, Gerard Steen proposed a new paradigm called deliberate metaphor theory. He agreed that when a metaphor is used deliberately, it provides an alternative perspective on the topic of an utterance. So in terms of a paradigm of theory, the focus of deliberate metaphor is whether or not the speaker is intentionally use a particular topic to speak of another topic. The objective of this study is actually to describe the aspect of the deliberateness of the metaphor, to identify the mapping elements from source domain to the target domain, and to describe the potential semantic derogation from the use of the metaphors. The methodology used here is descriptive qualitative study. There are purposefully chosen headlines on political topic with Islamic terms metaphor as source domain. The analysis is conducted to find the elements mapping of source domain and the deliberateness aspect of metaphor and the potential semantics derogation. This is result and discussion. We can see from the data here on how the description of the coalition condition, where it says that PPP describes PKS, talking about another party, as a prayer's follower who lives the prayer. So it described the member of a coalition who eventually leave the coalition as a follower, a prayer's follower who lives in the prayer. And this terms came from the Islamic terms of congregational prayer, which is ma'mum. Another use in a headline is when the chairperson of PKB party, Muhammad Iskandar, says that Caimin istilahkan Prabowo makmum masbuk, or in English, Caimin calls Prabowo a late joiner of prayer. This is the explanation. So this is approaching the 2019 election, where Prabowo's party, Gerindra, didn't make any decision at the beginning of coalition, but up until the end of the election, or even after the election, then Prabowo become a member of coalition. So that's why Caimin described that as a late joiner of a prayer, in a condition in a congregational prayer when someone join the prayer late, still need to follow all the steps in the congregational prayer. Now, as seen from example 1 and 2, before that, the Islamic terms metaphor is used to speak about political coalition. It's a novel metaphor. It means that it's not conventional. It is intentionally used, and most of them by the Islamic party leader. So it's like the speaker diverts the attention from political activities to the practice of the prayer. Now, in terms of who speaks this and to whom, I think the reason is the deliberate aspect or deliberate use of metaphor is intended to send a descriptive message for the supporters of the Islamic party, for them to be able to understand the political coalition condition by using the Islamic terms metaphor. So here I argue that the choice to use deliberate metaphor by the speaker is to get engaged with their audience. So by intentionally using the Islamic terms, it will provide an analogy that matches with the common cognitive knowledge where the supporters of the party are familiar with. Thus, we'll get the message across descriptively. Whereas for the elements mapping from the source domain of congregational prayer to target domain of political coalition, we can see that ma'mum, follower of prayer, as the member of the coalition, imam or leader of prayer as the leader of coalition, and the terms ma'mum masbuk or like general of prayer is joining coalition late. And of course, we can see that not all of the elements in congregational prayer will be targeted to the political coalition. So, for instance, the Ma'mum Masbuk, like genre of prayer, has to do all of the series of the prayer before he joined the congregational prayer. This is not actually mapped into the target domain. And this is the inferences when using other metaphorical description from Islamic terms metaphor, not only congregational prayer. This one is another terms that Pan says usual is an apostate, someone who actually converted to another religion. PBB carers become upset. So in terms of why the carers become upset, because the inferences by saying someone is apostate or converted to another religion is a very negative negative connotation. So the inferences when someone is actually means that somebody leave the party, and using description of the word murtad or apostate, it makes the supporters become upset or angry because the inferences from the metaphorical word that is used. This is the potential semantics derogation from the example of the use of berjamaah or the congregational prayer. Most of the use berjamaah is actually close to the word corruption. For example, 4 kasus korupsi berjamaah para wakil rakyat di daerah, or 4 congregational corruption cases conducted by the members of the Regional House of Representatives. So they highlight the elements actually to enable the use of berjamaah into the specific context. Corruption is the act of conducting action together. But the term congregational in metaphor make in this particular context exposed to a negative environment and collocation, and will trigger an unconscious association. So this in terms can trigger a potential semantics derogation when the word is used metaphorically. Thus, the multiple use of the word berjamaah in a similar negative context will potentially trigger a polyphony with derogatory meaning. Therefore, it can be suggested that the target domain of metaphor will play an important role in assigning an association and inferences of the metaphorical use. As a conclusion, the deliberate use of Islamic terms metaphor to describe politics is to maintain the communicative aspect between the speaker, who are the political party figures, with their supporters. By using the novel metaphors, it will send a vivid description on the dynamics of the political coalition. As for the potential semantics derogation for the particular use of the word berjamaah, it is triggered by the collocational context in which the metaphor occurs. For suggestion, it will need a further corpus studies that focus on the collocation analysis to a larger numbers of data to measure and to compare the context of the metaphorical use of Islamic terms metaphor. So that's all my presentations on my paper. Thank you very much for watching.